to the Psychotic Break. I'm Madey,
And I'm Kimi.
and you can see our faces now if you're on YouTube. So, hello.
Hi.
Kimmy and I have been doing this podcast for quite some time now, and we're available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, but we wanted to show you guys our lovely faces on YouTube.
This is the visual learners out there.
Yeah, or the people who just want to see our unedited angst and quirkiness.
Oh, that makes me so worried about what I'm going to say because I know I cannot cut this.
Yeah, so we're going to kind of advertise this YouTube channel as the podcast listeners who want to see our mistakes because we will be editing them out much less than our audio. So, welcome.
Hi, thank you for joining us here. We're happy to have you.
Oh, yes. So, Kimmy, what are we talking about for this episode?
Today we're entering the realm of social psychology, which we haven't really done so much, or at least specified that it is social psychology, but today is conformity.
Conformity. I'm very excited just to be dipping our toes into the realm of social psychology because that's really the only psychology that I care about. So, very excited. I have a lot to say.
I'm excited. Okay. So, what is conformity then?
Conformity is when an individual follows a group and they act in accordance to societal norms or just a specific social setting. So it's one person going along with the group.
Hmm. And we've seen conformity often used with teaching children about maybe why we shouldn't do that, usually when it comes to roughhousing.
Hmm. What do you mean by that?
We're doing the bridge kind of mentality where
Mm.
if you saw your friends ding dong ditching, you're automatically going to join them because as a kid, also, one, what is there to do? And two, what are the rest of your friends doing? Because as a child, all you care about are others and how to fit into societal pressures. And so the example would be,
I think we've all heard our parents or some sort of authority figure tell us, "Oh, Jimmy, if your friends," I don't know why I picked Jimmy. "If your friends are going to jump off a bridge, are you going to do that too?" And I was actually the smartass who would say, "Well, I'm sure they have a good reason for jumping the bridge." I would ask, I would take into account the situation. I perhaps it's an earthquake and I'm on the Bay Bridge or the Golden Gate. It's California. That's not the craziest thing in the world. So if we had to jump off, then yeah, I'd jump off if everyone's jumping off, but that's not really the point here.
no, no, it really isn't. You're going against the whole message.
Okay, well, I am a trailblazer, and in being a trailblazer, I'm not even really conforming. So,
True.
mhm,
Everyone's just, people are conforming to you.
that's true.
Oh.
Well, I guess that's interesting to talk about. Well, I have two thoughts. One, is conformity really a bad thing? And two, I forgot the second one. Let's just start there.
Depends on the situation.
Always.
Whenever you hear conformity, I don't know about you, but when people go, is it a bad thing? Usually, I don't know if this has happened with you, but the example is Nazis.
I was
Yeah,
going to say Holocaust.
yeah, exactly. Because obviously, I'm not going to speak for the Germans or the Jewish people because I am not fully aware about why certain people may have joined, but it's like the Hitler Youth. I'm assuming that most of these kids had Jewish friends, but as a child, you're really easy to persuade, and you end up joining into this kind of cult. It's not really a cult, but that realm. Um and you end up following things you've never believed in before and doing things you've never done. But then the example that could be considered good is with Disneyland, where if you're going to get on to create lines, to create order, to not have just chaos trying to funnel itself into one line, to get into the ride that you're about to stand in for an hour, they expect you to follow what others are doing, which is get into the line. Or if you see someone throw out trash, because I don't know if you know this, but Disney has their trash around like almost every 7 to 10 feet, because people after a certain amount of time give up wanting to find a trash can, so they have one in every line of sight so you never just end up littering.
Hmm.
And so if you see people throwing away their trash, you will also decide to, if they can stand up and move to the trash, so can I.
I love that.
They're the pioneers for industrial psychology, social psychology. All of Disneyland is just one psychological experiment.
My best friend is a big Disney fan, and it's not even just the characters, it's Walt Disney and the history of Disney and the fact that it really is just a genuinely good company. So I'm all for it. That's awesome. And I'm happy you bring that example up because conformity can be a good thing.
Yeah.
I don't think we should label conformity as always bad when you can get people to conform and obey and comply to good things.
Oh yeah.
So I don't want to just throw those terms around. So let's go ahead and explain what I mean by that. There's different types of conformity. We've established that conformity is a person going along with the group. There's different reasons and ways that people do that, though.
Yeah.
So I guess let's go ahead and look at our outline all, and we'll go in order. So compliance is doing something in line with what the group is doing, even though it's not in line with your beliefs. So you're following directions, but you don't really see the point.
Yeah.
For example, if your parent were to tell you to do your homework, you're probably going to do it even though you really don't want to. What is obedience?
Oh, okay. Well, this one could get mixed up in compliance just a little bit, so we're going to emphasize the fact that you're doing something because an authority figure that you personally view as someone of power is telling you to do something, similar to your parents tell you to do the dishes because they're your parents. I'm not saying you have to respect them, but you should because they're your supplier, essentially.
They did give you life.
Yeah, they did.
And I think a good way to distinguish this is to look at the Holocaust example. I wish we had a better example, but that's just the clearest one we have. So I believe that the actual Nazis
Hmm.
who were doing these atrocious things were doing it out of obedience to Hitler, who
Yeah.
was this authority figure. And anyone in society who would agree with Hitler or the Nazis were complying
Mm,
because they were a person trying to comply with the group.
yeah,
And I'm sure not all of them truly believed in what they were doing, but they were doing it simply because the group was doing it.
exactly. Which is terrifying to think about, that you can completely go against your beliefs and end up doing such horrible things. Especially when it comes to, I think compliance is almost scarier than obedience, because I get authority figure, they hold a lot of power. Abusive power is super common, but to follow a group of people that are your own like population, your own like general sphere, that's freaky. That's basically following everyone in your cohort at high school and just doing whatever they do.
It's like brainwashing.
Exactly. which they basically were doing when they, I don't know if we can get into how they specifically did it, but they, I think they also were indirectly using social psychology to get people to join them.
Yeah, whether they knew it or not, that's what was happening. And that's often what happens in a dictatorship when you have someone of such immense power who is charismatic enough to convince everyone of what they're doing. Now, it's interesting that you say that compliance is scarier than obedience because I think the next form is probably the worst of them all, which is acceptance or internalization conformity, which is doing something because you now believe in the reason that everyone else is doing it. So, looking at the Nazis again, unfortunately, I think that a lot of the Nazis did believe in what Hitler was doing, did believe that they were the purest beings, did
Yeah.
believe that they were doing what was right for society. And that's brainwashing on a whole different level. And it's really scary to think about. And I guess to bring it back to a lighter example, your friends are jumping off of a bridge. My thinking was they probably have a good reason for it. If
Yeah.
it is an earthquake, then I have accepted and internalized the reason that they jumped. Therefore, I jump.
But in that as well, I'm assuming your friends are rational human beings. That goes with it because if my friends told me to jump off a bridge, I would say hell no because my friends are stupid and I love them, but they're not the, they would do that for fun. So I
Mm.
would trust your friends and I would trust if Maddie told me that she was jumping off a bridge, I'd probably join her. Of all people, Maddie would be the one I think I would slowly move into internalization and acceptance that I too need to jump off this bridge, but teetering on compliance because I don't really want to, but I know in my heart that Maddie, of all people, had a good reason for this.
Oh gosh, that's so much pressure. I feel like, well, I'm flattered, so thank you. I promise I won't take that for granted. I won't be jumping off bridges, Kimmy.
Oh, thank you. I was very scared.
All right. Well, another example of conformity is normative social influence, which is one of those fancy jargon terms that we love to say. And all it is conforming to feel good in a group. And that's arguably something that always happens in conformity. You like to feel like you fit in, and we are social animals, which I think is one of the biggest proponents to why we conform.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Going against the Hitler one and applying it to teenagers, which we basically still are, everything we do, I would say, is a normative social influence where you want to be like the popular kids. You want to not feel like the outsider or the kind of nerdy kid or whatever. And so you'll do whatever it takes. Maybe you won't feel good, but in that moment, getting into that and actually entering into that specific sphere that you wanted to would probably feel really good until you have that revelation where that's not actually for me. And that's where you have the identity confusion crisis from Eric Erickson, where you realize maybe I am the outlier. That is the angsty teen movie everywhere, but sometimes not everyone is meant to be popular, and that's okay. But almost every kid, I would say, goes through that.
Yeah, there's a lot of great things you said in there. The whole identity confusion thing is so relevant to every single human being who's ever lived. Everyone at some point conforms and everyone at some point doesn't.
Yeah.
And what I think is so fascinating is that there are TV shows and movies and media that are telling you to be your own person, be unique, go against the crowd, be a salmon, swim against the flow of water. And I'm just wondering why that is. If we really do if society benefits off of people conforming,
Yeah.
then why are we producing those type of media?
Well, to slightly answer your question, but also to pose another one, don't most kids, when these movies come out that are all about conformity or breaking the confines, we tend to want to be the main character who was initially popular, but we still persist the idea that they are popular in our minds and we still want to be them, which makes us still just another follower and not actually unique. Okay, that's harsh. You're unique, honeys, but if you're following the thing, I'm thinking of my sister when she dressed up for Twilight. It's you wanted to be Bella, you're not
Mm,
Bella, but even though she was an outlier because she was weird as hell, you still wanted to be her as a viewer. So are conformity movies actually just producing more conformists?
I
Or
guess
breaking the
so.
conformity movies? Yeah.
That's kind of a mind twister right there. I suppose that we're all going to conform one way or another
Hmm.
in some sort of aspect of your life. You're going to get grocery stores from grocery stores. You're going to get groceries from the grocery store
Yeah.
like everyone else. You're going to get on the road and experience traffic just like everyone else. You're
Hmm.
going to have a job like just like everyone else. And there are exceptions to that rule, but I don't think anyone can ever be 100% their own person and just not conform in every aspect of their life. So I would say that TV shows and media are just trying to get you to come out of your shell a little bit,
Hmm.
knowing that you will conform to either the main character in the show. And typically, when you're looking at a film, the film producers and the writers are trying to get you to identify with the main
Yeah.
character because that's what a film is. You're trying to embody the other person and internalize and think about what your life would be if you were them, and that's the whole fun of film.
Hmm.
So you could conform in that sense, or you could, yeah, I don't know where I want to go with this.
Well, I hate to pose another question, but as you were talking about this, it made me think that when you're saying we all indirectly conform, even if we've officially broken away from the teen identity crisis conformity, are we all just nonstop conformists and none of us are, I'm not going to keep saying unique, but we're never not conforming, which makes us never not separate individual, which then goes into the new question of when do we finally decide that we're not conformists? Is it just based on one day you realize I'm okay with who I am, even though that means it all really is based on how you feel about yourself rather than do you have like an extrinsic purpose as to why you are doing something or how you are dressing or behaving.
To answer that question, I'm just going to go ahead and say that we should separate personality and behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
I truly believe that every single person who's ever lived has a very unique personality, is just their own person, so to
Yeah.
speak. And I believe that because every person who's ever lived has had a unique experience. They've had certain experiences growing up, they have different genetics, the whole nature and nurture working to create them. And then you have their behaviors, which have to be like everyone else.
Yeah.
That can't be unique because society doesn't thrive off of that.
Yeah.
We're social animals. We survive based on being in a group and monkey see, monkey do, essentially. To simplify it.
Damn. I feel more ununique every day from this conversation. No, but you're completely right. It's just upsetting when you actually think about it. Wow. Ooh.
I mean, that goes along with the whole idea of, do we even have free will? And I believe we do. I believe that yes, in more ways than one, you're conforming throughout your day,
Mhm.
but it's still your life. You're still your own person making these decisions. And I don't think anyone should feel restricted. They should
Yeah.
be proud that they are the person that they are, but they shouldn't feel bad if they conform at some point of their life because, again, not all conformity is bad. Recycling is good, people. If you're going to conform, do that.
It it really depends on, do you see yourself as the conformist and are you content with what you are doing? Because you could get out of the unique, like the standard 9 to 5 job, live in butt fuck nowhere. Like, it's possible. You can do it, and that makes you your own outlier. Don't get me wrong, other people have completely done it too. It No one's that big brained into coming up with new ideas of what to do based off of their dreams, because everyone's almost thought of everything in terms of how to break away from conformity. Because I try to break away from it by how you purchase clothing, but a lot of people are thinking about that. There's eco-friendly companies all over. No, I just feel unspecial. That's what I'm at now.
Don't feel unspecial. I mean, there's no other person who's like you, Kimmy. I mean, even if you dress like everyone else, even if you eat like everyone else, no one's gonna be you.
But I could be someone else. I like this.
Not really the point, but whatever makes you happy, Kimmy.
But that will be complete acceptance. I am doing it because I believe this person is cooler, therefore I should be them.
That's one way to do it, and I think that's one way that a lot of teenagers do it.
Mhm.
They'll see someone they like, they'll see someone popular, and then they'll think, "Oh, I'm gonna be like them. So I am going to." Oh, I'm thinking about Mean Girls right now, um, where oh, what was her name? It played by Lindsay Lohan.
Oh, Caddy? Katie.
Yeah,
It's Katie,
Katie.
my bad.
Katie. Katie, when she cut off the tips of Regina's shirt and let
Oh
her
my.
bra be exposed by two holes,
Yeah.
everyone started doing that because they wanted to be like Regina George.
Hmm.
So I think that's because a lot of people don't understand and aren't able to separate the personality from behaviors.
Yeah.
They think, I will do these behaviors, therefore I will be this person. But
Mhm.
I think that's a very flawed way of looking at it.
I think you just cracked Tina Fey's code. Oh my.
I'm here for it. I love Tina Fey.
If we're gonna follow any movie about conformity or breaking the confines, for sure Mean Girls, because Katie never actually does it entirely. She just has a revelation that it's all wrong, but she continues to follow her, or she becomes the leader who gets followed. The whole message is, I'm not saying I know the message, never mind, but conformity never really ends.
It could be looked at as this cycle, and I'm just looking at it as a spectrum now because at the end of the day, I look at everything like a spectrum. Everything falls on a spectrum. That's how my mind works. So we have the people who conform a little too much. They believe that I can be like this person. I need to do what everyone else is doing to fit in. It feels good. And then you have the people who are like, I'm not going to conform. I'm going to be a trailblazer. I'm not going to dress like anyone else. I'm not going to
Yeah.
eat like anyone else. I'm just going to be my 100% own person. Social media, TV, and movies usually tries to make this person look very good,
Hmm.
but I think it's problematic. You're looking at either end of the spectrum, and all extremes are bad at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So a person in the middle is able to conform for the right reasons
Mhm.
and be like, I'm going to conform because I believe in this. This is falls in line with my values.
Yeah.
But they're not so insecure to the point where they're like, I can't conform. I can't live with everyone else. I have to move to buttfuck nowhere. No, I think there's a lot of insecurity there also.
Hmm. That was so beautifully said. Oh my gosh. If we could make that into a clip. Yeah, that's the clip. Conformity is a spectrum. You never thought about it, but Maddie solved it, guys. So
And
then why are we why do we conform?
we conform for a lot of reasons. It really does depend on where we are in our lives. One of the most interesting reasons we conform is if we don't know what else to do.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and talk about that Solomon Asch experiment.
Oh, this one is so painful, especially when you read it years later after it's occurred. And it's still done today, which makes it a million times funnier. But essentially, it's the line experiment where let's say you have 5 lines on a piece of paper and they're all different lengths. And you're in a room and you ask which line is the longest. And obviously, you can tell which line is the longest. But if 3 people out of the 5 people in the room say the shortest line is the line, you're gonna choose the one everyone else is saying because you don't want to look like the stupid head.
Right. And now that we are showing visuals, I went ahead and replicated the experiment. So say that you are in a group of people, say there's 10 people, and little do you know, but the 9 people in front of you are actually Confederates who are people who have been recruited for the experiment who already know what the experiment is.
Yeah.
All, all you're asked to do is say, which line is the same length as this one?
Mhm.
Which is a very easy task. You're going to say B. However, every single person in front of you says A or C
Yeah.
when it's very clearly not the same length. But you're just so confused because every single person is saying that. So, most times than not, you're going to conform and say A or C when you know the right answer is B.
Which, in hindsight, we, as reading about this or showing you now, you would think, I would not do that. I know the answer. But if you were in a room where you don't realize any of these people are basically play actors, how would you actually act? You never know until you're there. And even if you were doing the study, you knew about it, and you were still doing it for fun, you'd probably still give in. I literally did it in college where I was in a study and they used a freaking Confederate and it was about conformity, and I did it even though I knew about the Ash experiment, I knew about all these things, because why wouldn't I question this tiny Asian woman? Why would they want to mess with me? Why would I want to look stupid? There's so many reasons.
Yeah, it's personal, it's situational. We conform based on the time of day sometimes.
Yeah, especially with traffic. If you see everyone's getting off the off ramp when you are in dead still traffic, you sometimes assume that they're finding a new path you never heard of. Or if you're on Highway 5 heading to Disneyland, you see people going on the, what are those things called on the side? Like there's the lanes, like the designated lanes and the pull off. And people
Oh,
sometimes
mhm.
just drive through them. And you always turn and you're like, I wish I were them, but that seems too risky. And that's a different type of conformity. You really have to not fear the law,
Mhm.
which I do. But if I
That
didn't,
that would be obedience to the law.
sitting in, oh, see, that's why the cops should like me. I would never do anything poor to them. I stay in the dead still traffic when I could skip all of it and save my time and energy.
Yeah, it's a very sticky situation. Yeah, I mean, it's just important for our listeners to know that not all conformity is bad. You're not a bad person if you conform. You're not any less unique if you conform, as long as you're conforming for the right reasons. A lot of conformity is just evaluating what people are doing and seeing if it is in line with your own values.
Hmm.
If it is, yes, you're technically conforming, but you're only fostering the unique person that you are.
Yeah. However, if it's the case of the Nazis, you don't realize you could think it's bad and you could still end up doing it. So, I guess another moral of this is that you have to almost go with your intuition. If you think it's bad off the bat, don't overthink it because that's how you end up spiraling. And I'm not saying gonna end up as a Nazi. You could end up in the bad form of conformity.
Yes. I thought you were going to be like, don't be a Nazi, guys.
Well, also, don't do that. You should also not be a Nazi.
All right, well, on that note, I have a coin. I am claiming heads because I haven't gotten one of these in a while.
Oh, see, oh, yeah, next week they'll know. I said tails and I still got it, so I'm really praying today.
Yeah, come on, heads. I'm ready for this one. Oh, come on.
Are you
Tails.
okay? Okay, I'm ready, guys. Where's my timer? Okay, everyone ready? In
Oh,
three.
and since this is potentially the first episode of the second season, we like to do a 1 minute wrap up and we do a coin toss to see who's gonna work under the pressure. Kimmy, for some reason, seems to get it every time. So,
What made it worse was I kept saying tails because I didn't want it originally. So if you watch or listen most of the episodes before, I had never gotten it, and then now I won't stop.
we'll just call this Kimmy's unlucky coin toss.
Now, have you been using the same coin by any chance?
Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty sure see heads, tails, heads,
Well, this coin is really balanced.
tails.
Wow.
It's just the luck of the draw, my friend.
Okay, are we ready?
Ready.
Okay. Today we talked about conformity, which is when an individual or a group of members follows a behavior because society has told them or they're in a specific social setting, which we gave the example of teenagers in high school where you conform because you're vulnerable at a time and you want to act like the cool popular people because you don't want to feel like an outlier embarrassed. Within that, there are many different types of conformity, which compliance and obedience are the idea of you're only doing it because a group is telling you or an authority figure and you usually don't really want to in the end, but you end up doing it. And then acceptance and normative social influence are kind of the same realm as well, where you're doing it in a more positive light because you personally believe so, or you think if you join, it will end up in good effects. Within that, the reason why we conform is that we don't want to be the outlier. We're social animals, and a lot of us aren't truly the most unique, so we kind of need to be a follower rather than a leader sometimes because not all of us are special.
Is that really how you're gonna end it?
I went over a minute and then I freaked out and I had to like answer something and then I regretted it. But then I'm upset too. I'm not special, people. None of us are. I'm not coming at you. This entire thing came at me.
Okay, well, I will leave the listeners with this, and hopefully it'll cheer everyone and you up, Kimmy. There was a speech given by some sort of professor at a college, and hopefully I'll be able to find it so I can leave it in the description below. The speech was essentially, you are not special.
Mm-hmm.
Telling all of the graduates why they're not special. They're just like everyone else. They're human beings and they all got their degree and they're not special. But the longer he got to talking, you realize that everyone truly is special because they're not. Because even though we are all on the same planet, even though we are all human beings,
Yeah.
each of our experiences is so incredibly unique that
Yeah.
yes, we're all binded by the fact that we're human beings and we have a lot of the same behaviors, but what we do with that, what we do with our lives, it's what is unique.
Damn. Maddie hit all the notes today. We ended with something to soothe our souls, and then she also brought in something that, if she ever wanted to do research, the concept of conformity on a spectrum. I think this was my favorite episode, personally.
This was a pretty darn great
I
episode.
think so. Hopefully others will agree, but we did everything in 30 minutes or less. And then we just, yeah. Okay.
I'm
This
happy
is
with it.
how we start the new season, the new showing our faces. This is fun.
Season 2, baby.
Woo!
Well, this has been the Psychotic Break. Make sure to follow us on Instagram.
At the psychoticbreak.pod.
We have a website which we'll include down below. We're on Spotify. We're on Apple Podcast. We are on YouTube. Check us out. And leave us a comment. Leave us a like. Leave us a rating. We want to interact with you guys.
We want to what people want. Recommendations for topics. We're only so creative people.
Yes, we have a long list, but we will add to that list.
In due time.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for listening. Hope you have a great day. And goodbye. Bye.
Bye.